major information about the Black experience, whether it's about the Black experience in Alabama or the Black experience, and wait for it, in our media. Yes, there are people of African ancestry even in our media. So this is what we do. And what I'm going to do for the rest of the hour, I don't want to bore you guys. What I'm going to do for the rest of the time is to talk about those 6 Black women that we analyze. And why do we talk about 6 Black women? Because Black women are the most underrepresented in terms of African American history. And these women are even more underrepresented than the typical Black women that some of which you've heard of. I don't know. I won't know how many of these folks you've heard of, but we'll work our way through them and we'll try to talk about why they're significant. The one common theme, the one common denominator is that each one of them is profiled on blackpast.org. And I can guarantee you this, there will be a lot more women like this profiled on blackpast.org in the future. Let's start with Isabel de Olvera. How many of you have heard of her? Good. because Isabel de Olvera is not a well-known person in terms of African American history or the history of people of African ancestry around the world. She was a founding settler of Santa Fe, New Mexico in 1600. And you can see from the affidavit, and you can read her statement, she is a free woman, and she is concerned about her safety. She's concerned about racial discrimination. She's concerned about enslavement, even in 1600. But what you should also note is the year. We usually start African American history with what?
18.
With 1619.
Okay.
This is 19 years before 1619. Isabel de Olvera allows us to completely reconceptualize African American history. It doesn't begin in Jamestown. If you don't remember anything else, remember that. It does not begin in Jamestown. It begins with Spanish-speaking Black people who come north from central Mexico, and they settle in a whole host of places in what we call the American Southwest. Now, why do we talk about this? Because one of the great unknowns in terms of Mexico is the huge mulatto, Black and mulatto population that emerges in New Spain. New Spain is essentially what we call Mexico today. And you can see the numbers. You can see this is 369,000 people. These are people who are in every community in New Spain, including the communities on the frontier. And we have some evidence to believe that many of these people came to the frontier for the same reason that African Americans would come to the frontier in the 1870s and 1880s, because the frontier represented freedom. But here's a couple of scenes of some of these people, some of these mixed blood people who emerge. And of course, this is a table that suggests the percentages of Blacks and mulattoes in these various places. These are the cities of the Southwest, or what we call now the Southwest. And I can tell you, every one of these cities lists a larger percentage of Black folks, maybe except San Antonio, a larger percentage of Black folks at that moment than live in those cities right now. And of course, Los Angeles is the great exception in the sense that the majority of people who founded Los Angeles were people of African ancestry. It's not seen in this diorama, that's an artist's impression, but 56% of the founders of Los Angeles in 1781 were Black folks, or people who looked like me. They were Spanish speakers. The culture was they were Spanish. And of course, many of them, others were Indian. And the people that we call Spaniard, that is the people who were originally from Spain, were actually a distinct minority. Think about that when you think about the creation of the second largest city in the country. We'll move quickly. Bridget Biddy Mason. Biddy Mason is a slave who becomes an enslaved person who becomes free. And she becomes free in a very interesting way in the West because she is a slave of members of the LDS Church. How many of you even knew that the LDS Church had enslaved people? But yes, they did. This is an enslaved couple on the left. The person on the right is Green Flake. How many of you have heard the story over and over and over again about Brigham Young coming to the Salt Lake Valley saying, this is the place? Yeah, he did that. But he did that after Green Flake actually saw the valley and reported back to him. In other words, this is the history that does not get told. Now, I want you to take a look at this. I want you to dive deeply into this. This is essentially the slave code for Utah. You can see how different it is from the slave codes in the southern states. Nonetheless, Bridget Biddy Mason was a slave. She didn't like being a slave. And she decided to use her being taken to California. This is a long and complicated story. I'll try to do it quickly. You know that the new headquarters for Zion was established in Salt Lake City, but the LDS Church also planned to bring people of LDS faith from around the world to Los Angeles, and then they have them come overland to Salt Lake City, what would be Salt Lake City. And as a result, the Mormons created two cities in the Southwest that you're probably not, well, you probably are familiar with. One was Las Vegas. Okay, yes, I know that seems like a contradiction. One was Las Vegas, and the other was San Bernardino. And Bridget Mason and her kids were going to be brought to San Bernardino to help to establish a presence there that would facilitate this migration of Mormons from the sea, from the Pacific up to Salt Lake City. But she had